So hey everybody, it's Erin and we're back doing our final video with my Christmas kit. Now, if you want a chance to win this Christmas kit or you would like to buy one, all the information is at the end of this video. I'm pulling out a couple more sheets of paper. Now, I had a couple sheets left over from this one, and I've used this paper for probably 2 to 3 different projects already, and I am going to use the remainder, what was left over, and I've just cut them because we're going to do some layering cards. I do have my card swap coming up, and this is the last batch of cards I'm making for my card swap, and I want to mount it on a sheet of paper just like this because it looks like a beautiful background paper. But we're going to do some more layers on this. So my first job is to actually get it mounted on this beautiful Rainier foiled paper in red. And so I'm taking my big sheet of paper here, and because I'm making 10 cards, I need to get 10 inserts. I already have 3. So I'm just using my guillotine to make my life easier right now. And the width of this is up to 5 inches. So I got to measure it all the way up because when you're looking at a card, and I ran out, I found 3 more cream cardstocks. And because we're doing a cream base, I need a cream cardstock. So the width of a card, of an A2 size card, is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. My first match that is going on top of this is just a little bit smaller. So it's 4 by 5 1/4, which means the next layer on top of that needs to be 5 by 3 3/4. So it's going down by 1/4 of an inch all the way around, or 1/4 when I cut it, which gives you 1/8 of an inch. So the next one that we're cutting, because this sheet is 5 1/4, this one needs to be 5. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this to 5. I like to double check about 3 times before I make a big cut because it's kind of hard to uncut. And since the width of this guy right here is exactly 4, it needs to be a little bit smaller so you can see that pop of red. So this has to be 3 1/4. So I'm going to try and get as many of these guys as I can. I will be able to get 3 of them easy. And if you notice, I'm not really worried about the orientation because they all look beautiful as a background paper, as you can see. And it's okay if the wording is going a different direction. We're going to be layering on top of it, but see how cool that looks? It's just this background, kind of a mishmash going on in the back right now. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this down as well. Now, I still have more stuff left in my kit, and I don't want to completely purge everything out of it. So I'm going to go ahead and reserve these tiny little pieces here and put them back inside my kit because I still have the rest of my December daily to make. I'm not done with it. I still have more pages, more inserts. And what if I just want to, cut out that's home for Christmas or use little strips or something? Or I've got So Jolly So Quick. I mean, I've got little pieces on here that I can definitely use. Now, if you have already used up all of this or you want something different, if you don't want to have a cream, there is this paper in there that is a craft cardstock that would look absolutely beautiful cut up and used for the same project. So it's just another way of doing this exact same project but with a different color. And craft and all the elements that we're going to be doing with this would work just as well. I went ahead and did a lot of cutting ahead of time before actually getting on to the video. Figured you didn't want to see me doing a whole bunch of cutting here. So layers are, and not all cards are going to be 100% identical for a couple of reasons. One, because I went ahead and cut some papers out of the ivory, but then I went ahead and cut some out of the craft just to see what the difference is. Design's the same. And because I decided to cut some extra out of the craft, I'd only cut enough of these little things to make for the ivory cards. And I really don't feel like breaking my die cut back out and doing all that mess. So instead, I'm going to use this sheet, and there's some really pretty little pieces that we're going to cut out later to decide what's going to be that focal point instead of this. We're going to have something a little bit different. And the other thing that's different is I only had 3 ivory cards, but I wanted to make a big batch, and I had a bunch of cardstock that I'd cut that was 12 by 12, and it wasn't enough to make a card that could fold this way. But what I could do is I could fold it this way. So if you notice, the card is the same. See the same difference? So it all depends on how you cut your paper. It depends on how the card is going to fold. And so for all of these cards, they're going to be some ivory and there's going to be some black. and you just fold them in half like this, and now you have a card that folds upward, but it's the same design, so I don't have to worry about changing what the look of the card looks like because the card is the same. So let's start with actually prepping the card. First step is, and I'm going to take you through an ivory one first. Let's go ahead and put some of my tape down from my tape runner and layer down this sheet that I've cut. And notice how I cut it just to be a little bit smaller, so it's basically matting it. Take another sheet. I'm going to grab this one just for fun. I'm going to use them all, but I just want to have fun. If you want to ink the edges, go for it. I'm not going to on this one. Layer that down. And I mean, that makes a beautiful card just looking at that with all those fun layers on there. But we're going to add more, if you can tell. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to layer up my two sections, which I have my little black sheets buried under here. I went ahead and did some black cardstock, and to me, black, craft, ivory, you know, they all kind of go together, which is why I picked the craft, which would be the burlap or the actual craft paper that we're going to be getting to later. And I just thought I love that kind of play on the textures. And I'm going to use the best glue ever. So just a little dab will do ya, just enough to stick one to the other, because I cannot glue the burlap to the card and the paper to the burlap. Burlap needs a little bit more. And I'm not worried about if my burlap piece is perfect. It's okay if it's a little bit off. I'm cool with that. Now, I have some little strips of paper here, which are just off to the side. And what I'm doing is I'm layering. I've got some gold, and on the back side is a red. So when I was cutting this, I had some extra pieces, but on the back side is gold, and so I'm going to use that. I also cut some paper that was gold with the silver on the back, and I like the silver and I like the gold. So I'm going to do a little combination of the three colors, and I'm going to layer these so that way they are cascading upwards. So I'm just going to put a little dab of my best glue ever on the back side here, layer it down, go with the next one. I like this glue because it's got a nice fine tip, which allows me to get into those little nooks and crannies and allow me to do something like this fine embellishment. If I wanted to actually flip over and do the red, I could, but I just wanted to add another element of some fun color. This glue does not set right away, so you've got some time to kind of layer it down. Now it looks almost like washi tape, which I think is kind of fun. Make sure it's layered evenly. Now I'm going to take this little strip right here, and I am going to take a little bit of some twine. I may not do twine on all the cards, but I definitely like the feel of it. So I'm going to go over this. I'm going to show you my trick. So first trick is, earlier I said my kids had hijacked my tape. I found it. All right, so when I do layers, it works better if it's on paper, but it'll work just fine with this because we're going to end up gluing it down. I like to do my burlap. And we're just going to do 2 strands with the twine. And then you come in, and then wherever it is in the back it overlaps is where I'm going to add my tape to secure it in the back. It's not going to secure super well on this because it is burlap with twine, but it's doing a pretty good job, so I'm happy with that. That looks like a little wrapped present. Realign all your pieces to where you like them. Need to readjust. You can readjust before you actually tape it down. And then we are going to add our glue to the back. Again, you got time to kind of fiddle and wobble. Now we're going to take one of these pieces. Now this is a piece of the same foiled paper, but I've die cut it to make it look like this beautiful holly piece. On the back side is gold, so it's an emerald on gold. And I'm going to add little bits of glue all to the back here. There's lots of ways you can add glue. I like the fine tip, and I can come in and get some of the little pieces so they don't get stuck on objects when they get in, like in a card. You want it to make sure that it's pretty flush, and this is a good glue with this fine tip applicator to get into all those little nooks and crannies there. And I'm going to just nestle this right underneath here and lay it down just like that. And I'm really also, I'm gluing it down. I'm not letting it sit and pop up. And now I'm going to take a little bit of this twine and make a little bow out of it. I always do the bunny ear method. And then right where it kind of crisscrosses, so I think I'm going to kind of go right in here. Actually, I'm going to go right in here. So it looks like it's wrapped as a present over top. I'm going to put a little dab of glue actually on here, right there. And this is going to also help secure the whole thing. The glue is going to dry clear, so you're not going to notice it. And it looks now, if I layer it just right, it will look like the bow is actually part of the wrapping, which is what I love, and it looks like a little Christmas present. So it's got some rustic pieces, but some shimmery pieces, and then the background paper looks really cool because everything else is kind of plain. There's no pattern to it, even though it's shiny or burlap or has texture, there's no pattern to it, so it works really well together. So this is one rendition of the card. Now we're going to do it on the black, but this time we're going to do it the black with the craft. So let's just kind of change it up a little bit. I know I've got a ton of these, and you're going to see some pictures of how they can alter, but we're going to do one that's going to be cut from our big sheet of paper over here. But let's go ahead and start our layers. So I do a mixture of both. I do the tape runner and the glue because I don't want to use up all the glue. Tape runners for the big stuff. For this card, because there's not going to be a whole lot of other color, I'm not adding the green. I'm going to go with more red. So I'm going to add my glue to this and keep the red side. But I don't want to go red on red on red, so I'm going to do a red, gold, red. Make sure I keep these strips. And the cool thing about the strips is that if they're not exactly the same width, I'm not worried about it. These are just extra pieces that were cut from leftovers. So that's what's kind of fun about that. There we go. I'll glue this part down. So notice how the design is pretty much the same up to this point. We've just changed up maybe what colors, the pattern paper, the background of the card, but the patterns, the main part of the card is the same. The one little change that we are going to do is we are going to change up what is on here, and I'm going to cut out this Happy Holidays. And since it's paper on paper, I'm just going to keep it, and then that goes in there. And one little change and you've changed the whole feel of your card. So again, same concept, except instead of having a ivy piece with all this layered, we've just added a sentiment in the middle. Easy. So, and changing the background paper. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up the rest of my cards. It's going to be a mishmash. Sometimes I'm going to do the craft with the swirl, with the bow. I may not do a bow. I just may have a swirl. I'm just going to kind of see where I'm going to go, but this is the general idea for the card. So I'm going to go ahead and mass produce, and I'll show you what they look like in a minute. So in the end, I ended up diverting completely from where I started off with. My intention was to make cards. Let me go back to the first one that I did. That looked like that on cream paper with the red, with the background, the 3 strips, the burlap piece with the die cut piece, and then the bow. And I realized that I'm not going to sit there and fussy do a bow. That was the only bow I did. I didn't do any more twine on any of the other ones. My hands got sticky and it just got to be a mess. I also ended up cutting extra paper. I did a whole bunch of paper that was, and of course I didn't do a single one on there. How funny. I meant to do a swirl that was on the other color, which I ended up cutting, there it is, some of the burlap paper, not burlap, sorry, craft paper, and doing that. But because I didn't cut enough swirls, I had to put some tags, so I pulled that out. But then I had all the supplies, and I just started kind of playing with it. So let me take you through each one and kind of go through. So this is the first one I did with you, which we did on camera. And there's quite a few that are, I would call, a variation of that. So all of these are what I would call variations. I also ended up cutting a little bit of craft paper as the base because craft was definitely part of the color scheme. It all went really well together. I was going to be short on strips, and then off to the side of my desk, I had craft strips left over from when I had to trim something up, and I had about 15 of them. So I threw them in the mix and started adding layers of craft strips to the whole thing. Sometimes I did 3, sometimes I did 2, but if you notice the base is the same. The only thing I didn't do to these guys was I didn't do the bow wrap, but same concept. And so here's another one. And then I changed it. Oh, in terms of the strips, sometimes I did silver, sometimes I did red, sometimes I did the craft, and sometimes I did gold. So I changed how many strips, where they were, but again, same concept. Sometimes it was on a black cardstock base, sometimes it was on the ivory cardstock base, and sometimes I did them on a craft cardstock base. So as long as all your colors go together, you can mix and match and decide where you want to go with that. I also did one where I didn't add any strips, just to see what it would look like. I wanted to see if I liked it, and I think it still looks great too. It just is a little bit different. Here's one with 2, and here's one with 3. So those are all the ones with the holly swirly thing. And then I had one more holly piece, and I was short. I didn't cut enough background pieces, and I didn't cut enough of the red background or the ivory or the cardstock. I was short, but I had some strips left over. That's the gold and the red. And I thought, okay. And I had one more of these bases. I thought, well, okay. So I cut another piece, and I had one more holly that got stuck underneath something else that I thought I'd run out of. But it didn't fit to go over top, so I cut it and nested it underneath. All right, so then I did a whole bunch with the tags that came from this cardstock paper. Now take a look at how many tags. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards. I was able to get a sentiment piece out of this one card, and look how many are still left. I just cut squares. I didn't do the filigree ones. I didn't do any of the ovals, and there's still 1, 2, 3 squarish or rectangular ones because I just wanted to cut with my scissors real fast. So that makes it really super simple. I changed the background. Notice how this one, I didn't even use a pattern paper background because I ran out of them. But I had one more solid background, so I went with that. It was solid, and then added a big strip because this was left over when I was cutting all of these pieces. I had a whole bunch of this left over when I was cutting everything up. So I was like, well, instead of throwing it away or putting it in my stash, use it. Again, a couple strips and then a really big sentiment tag, just making it super obvious. These ones, it's along the same ideas, but instead of adding the swirl, so you notice, instead of adding the swirl, I added the sentiment. That was the only thing I changed. This one, because it was so large, I didn't use that burlap piece, so I had one burlap piece left over, which I used on another card. So I kept going, oh, well, I have enough pieces to make one more card. I'll just change it up, and that's what I kind of did. So here's another one. Again, same concept, but again, I also changed which card it was on. I do have one on ivory. So here's one that's on an ivory card with a tall tag, just something different. And because the tag was so tall, I did mount it with a little bit of just cardboard. I cut cardboard, that way it was kind of mounted and kind of popped up a little bit. Instead of getting popped ups out, I had a cardboard box sitting right next to me full of some of this paper. So here's another version where it was more of a square, and so I moved, instead of having the tag far down, I moved it up. And then on this one, all I did is I rounded the corners with my corner rounder, which is, there it is. I have so much stuff on my desk, it's not funny. So here's my corner rounder. So every time I went to a card, I had my supplies sitting in front of me. I had all my stashes of stuff, and I had my paper here, and I just kind of started assembling. And every one I may have done a tiny bit different. I don't think there's a single card on here. I could be wrong, but definitely none of the tags because it's a different sentiment on each one. But I don't think even any of the holly ones are exactly identical. They're all just a tiny bit different. So I'm going to lay the holly ones out. So that one doesn't even have strips. That one's got strips. This one, the strips are in a different order. Again, even though there's 2 strips, different order. 3 strips, different colors. And then this one, yeah, not a single card is absolutely identical. Every one of them is a little bit different. And that's awesome. I love that. I had the supplies, and you just create. So why not have some fun with that? Change out what's on there. And I started with the plan of making 10 cards. And I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's my original 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I was able to make an extra 5 just by pulling out another sheet of paper, adding a couple extra bases for cardstock, doing a little bit of extra cutting. And then basically, because if you should see my desk, it's just jam-packed full of stuff. I've shifted a lot of stuff just out of the way for the camera, but I had some extra pieces, so why not throw them on there if they work? So that's where I kind of went with that. Giveaway. It's time for our giveaway, and also a chance to get this kit. Now, stuff I used from the kits. I use the pattern paper here, and I also use the pattern paper, the craft pattern paper. I also use the paper that is the have yourself all the tags and stuff. I also used a little bit of burlap, not 100% because I started running out of it, but this burlap piece came from the burlap trim that is in there. I ran out and I had a sheet of burlap that was plain, and so I started cutting that up and using it. But it started off with the trim that was in there. I just didn't have enough for all the cards. So we used quite a bit of the papers that are in here and a little bit of the burlap. So if you would like to get yourself a kit, just head on over to Canvas Court. Link is down below. Take a look. It is $77 of supplies, but keep in mind, like the burlap, it's not just Christmas. The papers we use, definitely Christmas. But if you flip over any of the papers, it's ivory or craft on the back, which is pretty fantastic. It is only $49.95, which is an amazing deal. And there's a lot more stuff in there. And if you want to take a look at all the other projects I've done making this kit, the little playlist is up on the iCard and also at the end of the video, so you can take a look. Now, how to win. This is video number 7, I think I'm on. I've lost track. I've done so many. Where I've used supplies from the kit. Not 100% from the kit, but a good chunk of it. So all you need to do is subscribe to my channel and leave a comment. Simple as that. If you want to go back and leave a comment on any of the other videos that I've done using this kit, go to that playlist up in the iCard at the end and go ahead and leave a comment. And each comment is another entry to have a chance to win this. It's coming to a close. This is my last video with doing projects from the kit, but I've given you guys a ton of ideas, and here's a couple more. Those are projects I made that I didn't do on video, but they have kind of the same concept of supplies from the kits. That's pretty rocking. You have until November 12th to leave comments on any of the videos. So make sure you do that, and then I will draw the big winner on November 14th. So make sure you come back and take a look at that. Thanks so much for stopping by and checking out all my fun ideas, including my next batch of Christmas cards for my Christmas card swap that I'm going to be sending out to some people that I've been swapping cards with. Have a Merry Holidays, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye-bye.